Hello, this is Cho of the Shiny Colors Discord, and welcome to another episode of the Shiny Review. Apologies that the audio seems a little off today. I had a small technical hiccup on the day of recording, and had to do a little bit of troubleshooting, which required changing a few settings, so hopefully everything turns out fine. If not, I'll try to get it sorted out for next video. We've got 3 cards we need to talk about today: a new produced SSR for Asahi, support SSR for Amana, and support SSR for Maid. Keep in mind that Asahi and Amana are both limited, so you only have a few more days to try to pull for them. Assuming that they come back around, which they hopefully will. As a general overview, Banner's really good. If you're a big fan of Vocal, especially Nocchill, Alstroemeria, or Straylight especially, definitely pull on the Banner. Starting things off, we have Asahi. Asahi's latest SSR is kind of ridiculous, to be blunt. Prior to Asahi 4, Straylight's biggest weakness was their innate lack of memory gauge boosting, so they would have to outsource from other teams if they could afford it. That's all changed, as Asahi has access to multiple instances of memory gauge boosting, along with overwhelmingly strong passives and scary good appeals at 0 and 4 stars. Asahi continues the new trend of having a passive with some sort of new functionality, with her 4-star passive needing 5 active vocal buffs at least to have a chance to activate. When you also consider that her appeals are AoE, and nothing about her skill tree is a waste of SP, she becomes incredibly efficient with every dupe you can invest into her. If you ever wanted to play Straylight and missed Asahi 2, this is your time. Nocchill will want Asahi as well to add to the list. Her roles are Center, Buffer, Attack All, and has memory gauge boosting, and I highly recommend pulling for Asahi. Asahi's initial skill is a Vocal 2.5 appeal that attacks all judges and applies 3 separate buffs. They're all Vocal 5%, but one lasts for 10 turns, one lasts for 7 turns, and one lasts for 4 turns. The Link appeal is a Vocal 50% buff for 5 turns and a 20% Vocal buff for 10 turns. At max, this becomes a Vocal 4.0 appeal that attacks all judges and applies 3 instances of Vocal 10%, one lasting 10 turns, one lasting 7 turns, and one lasting 4 turns. This links into the same Vocal 50% buff for 5 turns and Vocal 20% up for 10 turns. Asahi's 1-star passive is a Vocal 40% up and Memory Gauge 5% up that only requires Asahi on your team. This has a 30% chance to activate 3 times. Her 2-star passive is a Vocal 60% up and Memory Gauge 10% up that requires Asahi on your team, and also has a 30% chance to activate 3 times. This also unlocks a Vocal plus 50 uncap to her as well. 3 stars has a Vocal plus 150 uncap and Vocal plus 100 uncap, and at 4 stars she gains another passive, a Vocal 120% up that requires at least 5 active Vocal buffs. This has a 30% chance to activate 3 times. Her memory appeal when maxed out is a Vocal 50% up for 5 turns, and links into a Vocal 0.9 to 4.5 appeal that scales based on how many active Vocal buffs you have, a maximum necessary being 4, and these are removed upon using the Link appeal. Moving into support recommendations, Fuyuko is a very clear choice here. She has the unit synergy and is incredibly powerful as a vocal support. UFO Toru as well as Morning Glory Jury were also recommended by the stream showcasing Asahi, so they're a very good choice to have as well for their strong passives. You'll ideally want plenty of cards that want to hang in the vocal room as much as possible, so keep that in mind as you select your supports. For the alternatives, grab whichever vocal supports you might want to accommodate for Asahi. If you lack any of the limited pieces, permanent alternatives that are applicable can help too. Just remember to aim for Vocal Mastery cards and SP when at all possible. On to team recommendations. With Asahi at the helm, Mei and Fuyu can sorta just operate at a base level until you can Link appeal with Asahi. From there, it's hoping that your 120% passive kicks in, along with everything else for a swift but decisive memory appeal. As for the remaining members of your team, combining Toru 2 with Madoka 2 are absolutely a great idea, as they play around with the active buffs that Asahi wants for her memory appeal anyway, as well as having access to incredibly explosive damage and more AoE, which doesn't hurt. For the defensive side of things, Sakuya 4 and Kiriko 4 are still a very strong duo when paired together, and have a lot of options that allow Straylight to stall things out a little bit longer to set up for those bigger buffs. So, it all depends on what you have access to, for sure. On to the grades. Asahi earns an S+ or SS as a center. Asahi sits herself as the true center for Vocal Straylight. A nearly unconditional 4.5 vocal appeal, assuming you go through a full Straylight skill rotation, is devastating, and only becomes more dangerous as you factor in all of Asahi's unique passives to buff up the damage. The only minus mark you can make is the initial appeal only being a buff, but it works super well here, as well as being pretty strong in its own regard. As a unit, very easy double S. Continuing the barrage of incredibly powerful limited SSRs, Asahi holds nothing back with her ability to dish out damage, buff herself up, and the team, along with feeding memory appeals and providing some of the strongest passive bonuses out of any produced SSR. Once you nail down that skill rotation to set up her 120% passive, it's a done deal. Stray Light wants her, Noct Chill wants her, and maybe even Illumination Stars wants her. She's a must-have vocal powerhouse. Next we have Amana. In a surprising delay, we finally have a limited Amana support, who definitely doesn't disappoint in regards to what she offers. She's primarily built to be a support for Alstrameria, with a focus on high mental, damage cut, and one of the better 4-star appeals for a support. Now, she does have some direct competition with Tea Time Amana, who we've talked about in the review before. Honestly speaking, Tea Time Amana will be a lot stronger in the beginning, but as you get more copies of this Amana, she absolutely starts to outclass that Amana in a lot of different ways. Amana is a very powerful vocal support on her own, and devastatingly so when on Alstrameria. Her support skills are Idol's Bond, Promise Recovery, Rest Boost, and Stamina support, and her unique support skills are Unit Mastery SP, reaching plus 12 at level 80, and Vocal Mastery Vocal Limit, which reaches plus 5 at level 75. This now marks the second Vocal Limit card alongside New Year's Fuyuko, so you could combine those two cards to reach plus 10 as long as they're both in the vocal room at the same time, and plus 20 if it hits perfect. Her support appeal scales starting at a Vocal 3.0 that applies a 5% mental damage cut for 2 turns, which upgrades to a 25% damage cut for 2 turns at level 80. Her TFD idea is Appeal, and her insight token for Grad is Visual. Amana's 1-star passive is a Vocal 40% up that requires the turn count to be 4 or later. This has a 10% chance to activate 3 times. Her 2-star passive is a Vocal 75% up that requires your mental to be 75% or higher. This also has a 10% chance to activate 3 times. Her 3-star uncap is a plus 100 to vocal, and her 4-star appeal is a vocal 0.8 to 4.0 that scales based on how high your mental is, and also applies a 20% mental damage cut for 2 turns. Her event passive is also a mental damage 20% cut that requires your mental to be 75% or higher, and has a 20% chance to activate twice. Amana earns anywhere from an A to a double S. It all depends on where you use her. If you just want SP for a vocal team, the previous vocal Amana will probably serve you better, unless your name is Alstrameria, or this Amana reaches at least 2 stars. While vocal Alstrameria have taken a bit of a backseat for the last few months, this is a big step in a good direction for them. You might even find a place for the appeal on your team if you think damage cut is something you can use. I moderately recommend pulling for this Amana. Lastly, we have Maid. It hasn't actually been too long since our last Mei support, except this time we have an event card instead. Strictly speaking, Mei is generally good. That being said, she pales in comparison to Uchikuru Mei, the limited visual card, but that's not really a fair comparison at all. She's honestly a good pickup as an event SSR, with good damage, decent masteries, and fine enough passives. Her support skills are Idol's Bond, Promise Recovery, Rest Boost, and Stamina support, and her unique support skill is Visual Mastery Visual, reaching plus 8 at level 75. Her support appeal scales starting at a Visual 2.5, becomes a 2.6 at level 60, and a 3.0 at level 80. Her TFD idea is Visual, and her insight token for Grad is Mental. Mei's 1-star passive is a Visual 18% up that requires an active visual buff. This has a 30% chance to activate once. Her 2-star passive is a Visual 35% up that requires the turn count to be 4 or later. This has a 30% chance to activate once. Her 3-star uncap is a plus 50 to visual, and her 4-star appeal is a Visual 2.8 that applies 2 separate Visual 10% buffs, one lasting for 5 turns and the other lasting for 10 turns. Her event passive is a Visual 20% up that requires Mei on your team. This has a 10% chance to activate twice. Mei earns anywhere from a B+ to an A-. New Mei is very solid, but again, not a huge priority if you already have limited Mei. She has reasonable passives, a pretty okay 4-star appeal, and fine enough support skills. If you ever needed a visual unit to fill in the gaps, Mei has you covered. I recommend farming for her while she's around. And that'll do it for the video today. Thank you so much, as always, for watching. If you like the video, make sure to, well, like it, as it helps make sure that more people will see it, and subscribe to the channel if you want more Shiny Colors content. We recently just finished a tutorial for Wing, which now means we have tutorials available for all the major game modes of Shiny Colors. So if you need to learn more about the game, check those out as well. Till next time, I've been Cho, thanks for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day.